I'd like to introduce the individuals that are with us today. We have Mayor Donnie Tuck here standing on us. We have City Manager Ms. Bunting, Commonwealth Attorney Anton Bell, and behind me is U.S. Attorney Mr. Slotsnik. Now I'll turn it over to Chief Soul.
Hopefully I'm not messing up your microphones here too much. Thank you first off for coming out today. I know that we're on the heels of another press conference that many of you probably attended in Newport News. Newport News is our sister city. What occurs over there often resembles or rumbles over here. And so their problems are very similar to our problems and vice versa. We have a very strong working relationship with the Newport News Police Division and also with the city as a whole. And I want to thank them for all the cooperation and partnership that we have with them. We have experienced over the last year an increase in violent crime of about 12%. Most shockingly, we've seen 7 additional homicides in 2016 over 2015. In general, people in the city are pretty safe. The folks who are involved in these shootings and the homicides are typically involved in high-risk lifestyles, and the percentages of being involved in a violent crime are very low for the average citizen. That was not the case yesterday. We had an incident that occurred across the street from Bethel High School, and an incident that just shocks the conscience. It certainly shocked mine. And frankly, enough is enough. At the end of the day, when a grandfather who is trying to teach his grandson to drive a car in a school parking lot gets hit by a stray round, it's just too much is too much. And so to that end, we wanted to provide a little bit of an update of where we stand, what we're doing, what we have been doing, and where we're going in the future. The folks that are standing behind me, we stand as one. We stand unified in the direction that we're going. And I did want to talk just a little bit. We did have 22 homicides last year, but I guess most importantly, we need to look at what the trends are doing. It seems to be becoming a societal norm to carry a gun by a lot of our youth. We had 72 people shot last year in addition to the homicides. When we look at our weapons offenses, we had 145 more incidents last year than we did the year before of weapon offenses. Now these are like carrying a concealed weapon, firearm by felon, possession of a firearm by felon, or shooting incidences involving a firearm where shots had been fired. We saw an increase in our aggravated assaults using firearms as well. Back in November, we initiated a gun crime task force here in Hampton. It mirrors very similar to the way one is running in Newport News. Since November 12th through January 4th, these officers have conducted over 550 self-initiated citizen contacts in the field. That can be traffic stops, that can be field interviews, or just contacts with citizens out on the street. They've seized over 18 firearms, and they've resulted in over 92 charges just from this group. As a result, they are making progress on the street, but we're not making progress quick enough. This is going to be a long-term endurance to get the guns off of our street. As we go forward, there's a number of things that we need to be doing. One of the things that we're going to do is we're going to actually commit more resources to the initiative on firearms. We are pulling officers from other assignments and beefing up, pretty much doubling this gun crime task force in size. We're putting experienced officers in this unit. We're going to be providing training to them, enhanced training on how to make better firearms cases, and then coordinating with our prosecutors to create a zero tolerance. If you do a gun crime, you're going to do time type environment in our city. We continue to work aggressively towards enhancing our capabilities and our operational capacity here in the city. Our manning levels, we have just received a grant for 5 additional officers through a COPS grant, working with the city manager and the council to request an additional 7 more officers in this upcoming budget cycle to assist on the street. But in the meantime, we have just had an academy graduate and released about 18 officers from academy, and they are now in training in the field, putting additional uniforms in the field for us. We're making advancements in technology and investing in technology to be smarter in policing and embrace smart policing technologies. To that end, we will be standing up in the very near future, which has already been funded, a real-time information or crime center to where we can integrate camera systems on both city-owned camera systems and systems in public-private partnerships to where we can access private cameras when the company decides that they would like us to monitor those cameras. The Real-Time Intelligence Center Information Center is really designed to make the best practice we can out of that response time between the time the officer gets a call for service to the time they arrive on the scene. What information can we glean from that? Can we get it to the officer's hand in a usable fashion as quickly as possible? And then once they arrive on the scene, can we have people working in the background to get them usable and actionable information as close to real time as possible, so we can get those who would do harm in our community in custody as fast as possible. In addition to that, we are working with the Coliseum Central area to begin what I would call a security communications network, or a CCOMnet. Now what that is a common radio talk group that private security and police officers can talk directly to, and also emergency services units, the fire department, or even the ambulance while responding to a scene. All too often we'll get a call from a private security officer who's, say, guarding the Peninsula Town Center or one of the stores, and they have to talk to their dispatcher, and then that dispatcher has to talk to our dispatcher, and then our dispatcher has to turn around and communicate it to our officer in the field. What we're trying to do is to enhance the information flow by allowing that security officer to talk directly to the police officer as they respond to the scene. We hope to have that up and running in the near future in that area. We're also going to be looking at automatic vehicle locators in our patrol cars and our public safety vehicles. Now the purpose behind that is to be able to send the closest police car in the most efficient fashion to reduce the response time that we have to our emergency calls for service. It also opens up the opportunity for us to have discussions with Newport News on sending the closest police car to the emergency call for service regardless of jurisdiction. As you know, we have a lot of incidents that occur along the city lines. Sometimes their cars are closer than our cars are. It shouldn't matter who's responding as long as we can help a citizen in need in those locations. We're doing that on a regular basis now. We're doing joint patrols with Newport News. We're communicating daily on crime trends in those particular areas, and that's just another step forward in that particular area. We're investing in smarter technologies and how to share information in real time. And we'll learn more about that as we go forward in the future through analytical capabilities. Another thing that we're working with Newport News and Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and the state lab on are discussions now into implementing a NIBIN system, or a National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, on the peninsula, operated by both Newport News and Hampton in collaboration. We hope to have that well underway within the next 60 to 90 days. We're still in the discussion processes, but thanks to the support of both city managers and hopefully for our council, who will hear more about this later this week, that funding has already been identified, and we're going to move forward with that. Now what that does is that when we have two shootings, we don't have to wait 6 months to figure out if this shell casing matches that shell casing. We can start linking cases a lot quicker instead of waiting for the normal lab times to turn around. At the same time, we can actually save time in the state lab by only having them analyze the bullets for court purposes that need to be done for court purposes, and they don't have to analyze every single shell casing that we recover. We need the short turnaround, and thus we're willing to make that kind of investment to do that. As we go forward, there are a number of other things that we're looking to do. We want to make sure that we're focusing on prevention, intervention, and recovery as well as enforcement. But make no mistake, we should not confuse the societal issues that we have going on that create an environment where there is a lack of opportunity for our youth. We need to address all of those things. but we need to make sure that we hold those accountable who choose to pick up a gun and pull a trigger. If they're going to use a gun in the commission of a crime, they need to be held accountable for their behaviors, for their individual decisions. At the same time, we've got to be just as vigilant in providing an opportunity for them when they get out of jail and making sure they have a true opportunity when that occurs. And then it's up to them as to whether or not they take the opportunity to engage in those that are given to them. But also, we need to be looking at prevention and intervention in the long term. This is a marathon, as commonly said in our council chambers. It is not a short-term sprint. These are societal issues. These are parenting issues. When you have a kid who's at 4 years of age, and we have documentation of kids at 4 years of age holding a gun and pointing it out for social media, then that child has grown up with a gun in their hand. We have got to break that cycle. That is a long-term cycle that we have to be diligent about. At the same time, today we have got to hold these folks accountable who are pulling triggers, particularly near our schools. With the manager's assistance, we're going to be looking at pulling together teams to look at families in a holistic perspective. We're going to focus on those individuals who are most likely to be involved in gun crime. We're going to work with probation and parole to use them as a lever to try to provide them intervention opportunities. And if they choose to partake in those interventions and try to turn their lives around, we will help them. But if they choose not to, we're going to put them in jail, even if that means putting them in jail for the rest of their lives. We're going to take this very seriously. Our citizen safety absolutely comes first. I think you can tell right now that I'm a little frustrated. I've never seen so many kids carrying firearms and try to solve problems by pulling triggers and carrying guns. We have created an environment in this country that has decriminalized a lot of the crimes. I was just reviewing some of the nonviolent offenders that was released to our community through some of the nonviolent drug crimes supposedly released individuals back to our community. I looked at 13 of those. Of those, most of them had robbery charges, they had maiming charges, they had gun charges, they had robbery charges. It's amazing the number of violent crimes that these individuals had committed, but yet they were released on the auspice of being in jail for a nonviolent crime. Nobody looked at the impact that they were having on our communities. And we need to be more resilient. We need to make sure that when we put someone in jail for violent criminal behavior, that we don't release them simply because we think that they're going to be safe in the community. We need to do an intensive background. We need to make sure who we're releasing and do they truly have an opportunity to turn their life around before we turn them back out on society. Under some of the criteria that we have been releasing prisoners from on the state and the federal level, we would have released Al Capone. Think about that. And that's just how irritated I am. We absolutely would have. But more to the point, it's partnerships that will get this together. It is the community pulling together that will resolve this issue. Violent crime is not just a police issue. It is a community issue. There are people out there in the community today that know what these shootings are about, that know who's pulling the triggers. When I have parents that come into the hospital and they say, we're going to let street justice take care of that, as their child is laying there on the gurney with a bullet in them, something is disconnected and something is wrong. But the community has to pull together. If you see something, you have to say something. The city is going all hands on deck. The manager had an emergency department head meeting this morning. We talked about what can every city employee do to help with this problem. And basically that's to be a good citizen. While they're out there working day in and day out, look to what you know is normal, look for what you know is suspicious, and call it in and let us deal with it. Let us work directly with it. We're asking exactly the same thing of every single citizen. Be a good citizen and let's take our streets back. We're in great partnership with both our Commonwealth's attorney and with our U.S. attorney. Office here on the peninsula, and I'd like to ask our Commonwealth's Attorney Anton Bell to say a few words.
Thank you. Gun violence is not just a Hampton or a Newport News issue. Gun violence is a national issue. According to MSNBC.com on today, just reading the article, and on New Year's Day alone, over 200 people were killed or injured by way of gun violence. And so it is indeed an issue that is plaguing our nation. In the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, as a result of the onslaught of new cases that we have been seeing with gun violence, we put together a team of attorneys, 5 attorneys, to just focus on the type of cases that involves guns, gangs, and drugs, and any homicides that are the results of guns, gangs, and drugs. In addition to that, we have been able to secure a grant that funded an attorney position that dealt with violent crimes against women to address, again, the onslaught of the gun violence that we're seeing. In addition to prosecuting, because it's one thing to deal with the situation after it's occurred, but it's another thing to try to prevent it. And so one of the things that we're doing in the office is we are going into the neighborhoods and we're doing community conversations with the Commonwealth. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to help parents position their children for success. You can address issues with children through mentoring. You can address issues with children in community services and on the playground. You can do it in the churches and different organizations. But if they go back home to a dysfunctional home, a lot of the things that you're imparting into those kids, unfortunately, falls to the ground. And so one of the things we want to do is we have partnered with Healthy Family to go into the neighborhoods and do these conversations and help parents position their young people for success, and then also help them to understand what's going on in their communities and how they can be a part of the solution. Fighting crime is not a law enforcement issue solely. Fighting crime is a community issue. It takes each and every one of us to stand together and say we will not have this type of behavior in our community. So I'm thankful for Chief Salt and Mrs. Lochnick for our partnership and collaboration, because we stand together united to let this community know we will not stand for this type of behavior. In our office, we have a no-drop policy concerning gun violence. If you carry a gun and commit a crime, and we can prove the case, you're going to eat it. Bottom line, we're not going to make an exception. We're not going to look at the fact that maybe this is your first time. If you carry a gun and you hurt somebody with that gun, you're going to eat it. Bottom line. And that's the position that we're going to take, a harsh stance when it comes to gun violence. We're not going to accept it, we're not going to tolerate it, and we're going to stand together to fight it as a community. And as a community, we can overcome it. Thank you.
Howard.
Good afternoon. My name is Howard Zlotnick. I'm the Managing Assistant United States Attorney here in the Newport News Division. We cover Hampton, Newport News, the Peninsula. I'm here on behalf of the United States Attorney. The United States Attorney is Dana Bente, and he knows I'm here. And what I want to say is that we're here in collaboration and working together with our partners in the Hampton Police Division and the Hampton Commonwealth Attorney's Office. We've been working together for a long time. We've built a great collaboration. Many of the cases that are state crimes are also federal crimes, and you've got a strong state system, but we also can supplement that state system by federal prosecution. In the federal system, there are firearms crimes that we take very seriously, and I've committed, and we are committed to working them with our partners in Hampton. And wherever an individual is a convicted felon and he's carrying a firearm, we can prosecute those cases, and the law allows a judge to give a 10-year sentence of imprisonment just for a felon carrying and possessing a firearm, even constructively. And I see those almost as murder prevention statutes. We get these people that have a bad record, they're possessing a firearm, and we can strongly prosecute them. We also have statutes in the federal law that make it a crime where someone is committing a federal crime, say a robbery, whether it be a bank robbery or a robbery of a business that's affecting interstate commerce, say a robbery of a telephone store or the robbery of a 7-Eleven. If a person is carrying a firearm in that crime, he is possessing it, he is responsible for a consecutive 5 years on top of the robbery conviction. If he brandishes the firearm, it's a consecutive 7 years. If he discharges a firearm, it's a consecutive 10 years. And the same with drug offenses. If an armed drug dealer possesses a firearm, we can get a mandatory 5 on top of the crime for the possession of the illegal drugs, which sometimes, because of the weight and the person's record, carries another mandatory minimum, consecutive. And again, if the individual who is in possession of a gun in furtherance of a drug trafficking crime brandishes it, it's a consecutive 7. If he discharges it, a consecutive 10. So we can use those statutes to great advantage to protect our communities. And additionally, we are very focused, as we've been for some time in Hampton, on dismantling these armed gangs that are engaged and fueled by drug trafficking and other crimes of violence, sometimes even through prostitution. And where these gangs are carrying guns and they're committing crimes with guns, we can dismantle the entire organization through our racketeering statutes, our firearm statutes, our drug statutes. So we're here together with Anton Bell's office, with Chief Salt, and with our partners in Newport News to help this whole community combat this scourge of firearm violence. And this is a team endeavor. It can't be done with one group. And I can tell you that we work closely with our counterparts in the Hampton Commonwealth Attorney's Office. There are cases that we look at where is the best place we can take the case. We discuss that and we bring it in the forum that's best suited for that particular case. And I think there's great partnership. We work together and we will continue to work together, and we're all committed to making this a success. Thank you.
In closing, questions. The City of Hampton gets it. We know that this is a long-term effort. We know that we need to be turning young lives around and that we need to be providing opportunity across the board. And I mean true opportunity, where a kid can go through high school and know that there's a realistic chance that they're going to have a really good job when they come out, or that they can get into college. We need the community to get engaged to make sure those opportunities exist. We've got a great youth prevention, crime prevention coordinator in the city to help with these efforts. We have options that are out there. We have a great faith community that's pulling together. And so the choice is the bad guy's choice. If you want to take a life of being the bad guy, you make that choice, we're coming after you. And we're going to hold you accountable, particularly if you pick up a gun. If you want to turn your life around, we'll hold your hand, we'll walk you through it. We'll help you with that. Make no mistake, you pick up a gun, you do a gun crime, you're going to do time. We're going to work with our state, local, and federal partners. We're going to call, just as the city manager has done with the city, all hands on deck from a law enforcement perspective. We're going to utilize every resource and bring it to bear on those who will pull the trigger in our city. Any questions?
Chief,
Yes.
Was last night's shooting the prompting for this, or what kind of led to your decision to hold this today?
It's a combination of things. One, it's the end of the year, and we've got some statistics. So we want to be as transparent as we possibly can. But yesterday's pretty doggone shocking. You know, every chief's nightmare is to go into an active shooter scenario. And when that call comes across the radio, and you hear officers responding to Bethel High School reference a shooting and a gunshot victim, you don't know what's happening. You just got every unit in the city going that direction. And you're trying to brace yourself. That's pretty shocking. And then when you get there, you're both relieved, but you're also scared for the community because you're very, very concerned. You've got a grandfather, no kidding, he's sitting there trying to teach his grandson in the parking lot to drive a car. And he catches a stray around through the door and hits him in the side. That's completely unacceptable. Another car was struck 5 times, an older couple in there by the gunfire. That is completely unacceptable. Enough is enough. We've already put emphasis on this. We have been aligning resources. We have hired a special prosecutor with the U.S. Attorney's Office several years ago to put this initiative in motion. We've been taking it very seriously for some time. But at this point, we're seeing a lot of gunfire. We're seeing multiple rounds being fired, and we're just going to have to draw a line on it, and we're going to have to get it under control. And there are both long and short-term solutions that we have to put into place for that.
Chief, of the 22 homicides in the last year, how many of those are solved and how many are still unsolved?
I don't have those statistics in front of me, but A number of them have been solved. I will commend our investigations unit. The shooting yesterday, we already have one person identified, one in custody, and charges pending. We're looking for a third and maybe even a fourth at this point. But the investigators, with the heavy workload that they have, are doing an amazing job. They really are. I'm very, very proud of them. The officers on the street, their coverage when a shooting comes in is amazing. How quick they can set up a perimeter, how quick they can get on the scene, and the enhancement of the gun crime task force to assist with that is just very imperative. I will say this. With the increase in the number of gun incidents that occur, that increases the number of armed encounters that we run across out there on the street. The risk to these officers' lives go up exponentially when this is occurring. And it's very dangerous. It's very difficult for the officers. It's very difficult for their families to know what they're walking out there into every day. Because they're the ones that are taking this very seriously, and they're the ones that are going after the ones with the guns. But at the end of the day, I will remind folks that the ones that are involved in this are living very high-risk lifestyles by choice. They're engaging in gun activity, and still the risk, even though we've had some very serious and concerning incidents, still the risk to the general population, if you're not involved in gun trafficking, drug trafficking, or high-risk lifestyles, is still very low as far as being a victim of violent crime.
So the gun crime task force, that's still continuing? You all are still...
I'm actually doubling the number of folks that are on it.
The 550 self-initiated interactions, did I hear that right? Can you
Correct.
explain more about how those...
Those would be like traffic stops. They would be suspicious person, coming in contact with a suspicious person. It would not be what we would call community policing, non-enforcement activity. It would be related to some type of enforcement action. We have actually increased the number of positive non-enforcement actions across our city by 20–30%. It's just a tremendous commitment to community policing that we're doing. And keep in mind that it's important for us not to try, but at the same time we're trying to hold individuals accountable. Information is the key, because we want to protect and have people who live in these challenged communities, or the communities that are threatened by the gunfire. We want to make sure that they don't feel like they're being in a police state, but at the same time we want to hold people accountable. So it's important for not only our regular officers to get out in the community and get to know on a first name basis individuals in that neighborhood, but it's important for the gun crime task force to do the same. We want to know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. That's the bottom line. And if you know who's committing the gun crime, you go after those. The neighbors will know who it is. And I can't emphasize enough, people know who are committing these crimes. People have information out there that will help us solve these crimes. We need people to tell us and provide us that information. At the end of the day, we have all the technology and forensics and all of that, but we solve crimes because people tell us who did it. That's it. And 90% of the time, that's how we solve crimes. And then we use the forensics and everything to corroborate what somebody told us.
Is the frustration level more than in previous years?
I've been in this business for 40 years, and the only thing that even comes close to this was the open-air drug markets and the crack cocaine days back in the late 80s or early 90s. This is very concerning, and it's concerning because our youth are dying. It's really, they're shooting each other. And, you know, when we did the partnership with the Washington Redskins, one of the players sat there and he made one of the most profound statements, and I challenge you to pull that up on our website. But he made the statement that said, I go to a cemetery and I think about all the talent that's buried here and all the opportunity that was lost there. Think about that. You know, that's what we're trying to save. We're trying to save our future. And if it means that we have to put people in jail, then we're going to put people in jail. If we can provide them the opportunity, we would prefer to do that.
I just have another question about the year 90-some-odd arrests. So does that mean that 400 and some odd people did nothing wrong and were stopped by police?
I'm just saying that was from November 12th for this one unit that had done that. An investigative stop could be going out, and it could be a consensual contact where there was nothing wrong, but they might be talking to the person looking for another suspect. And so that's just a contact in the field that's enforcement related, as opposed to going up and saying, hey, my name's Terry Salt, I'd like to meet you and become your friend. There's a difference between an enforcement related contact and a non-enforcement. An enforcement related contact doesn't mean that we're necessarily stopping someone forcibly through reasonable suspicion or probable cause. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your time and for being here on such short notice.